First of all, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming. It's amazing. I'm seeing where everyone's from, and it's like all over, like the world really, which is just amazing to see people coming together with a shared passions. And if we can't do that as much on Passover as we'd like to, at least we're doing it a bit now. Also, thank you to My Jewish Learning for setting this up. My Jewish Learning is a great website that I've been using in a lot of my classes, and a lot of my congregants use a lot. So it's definitely something to continually check out. There's a lot of great content there. In terms of the Seinfeld Haggadah, so the questions that I usually get are, why did you do this? Does Jerry Seinfeld know about it? And like, what was it like to write it? Those are usually the questions. So I'll kind of answer those. I know we'll have time for questions at the end. Or if you have anything specific, you're welcome to put it in the chat box as well. But the essential answer to the question of what this is. So it's a full Haggadah. You can use it at your Seder. It has the full Hebrew text that you can fully use as much to the full extent, or if you would like to use part of it, like any other, virtually any other Haggadah you've seen. But it's not like every other Haggadah in the sense that it's as much Seinfeld as I could reasonably put into a page without it taking away from the Haggadah. So the commentary is all commentary that weaves together Seinfeld and Torah, and as part of this, I'm actually going to teach a couple of the, or we'll learn together a couple of the little pieces of Torah that are throughout the commentary, that are throughout the Haggadah. Some chosen ones that I think make sense for this type of format, where I can share a video and I can kind of make it a little more interactive. I'll show a page soon, but like the translation, I tried to put references in. The pictures have references in them. So I'm actually, in order to do that, I'll actually show specifically one page, just to kind of, for you to get a sense of what I'm talking about here. But I guess even before I do that, the cover, I tried to do that as much as I could with the cover itself. So I'll show the cover right now, in case you haven't seen it, but just to explain what's going on with the cover. I tried to make it kind of ask the question, what would Jerry's apartment look like? What would the Seinfeld apartment?
Rabbi Reinstein, we're actually
Yes.
seeing your email, not the document.
Oh, okay. Wait, okay. That's not what I want. Oh, I see. Okay. Stop share. Thank you.
No problem.
I thought I shared that screen. Now better? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I tried to imagine what his apartment would look like if he was getting ready for Pesach. So on the table, he's got his Seder plate ready. He's got his matzahs and wine ready. I imagined he would use Manischewitz. That was just my guess, but I'm not sure. He put away his chametz. If you look really closely, I actually changed all the, it's hard to see here, but on the book, you can kind of see, I changed all the cereal names to like these kosher for Passover cereals that aren't very good, but are warranted. Like at least in my house, we used to, separate off certain places that had chametz in it and made signs to cover it away. So I tried to make it this is a Seinfeld book, but it's also a Passover experience. So similarly, I'll just show one page. I wanted to show like a page that showed everything. This is one in particular that shows everything. Here we go. So this is what the Haggadah looks like generally. You can see it, the double-sided page. Yeah. So right on the right is the Haggadah text, fairly. I tried to make it a little more usable by having like where verses are from and things like that. But generally, on the bottom is the commentary as you would kind of expect it to be. But obviously, in this case, it's about juji fruits. the time when Elaine decides to stop for Juji Fruits instead of going to see her boyfriend who was just put in the hospital. And I tried to ask the question, why is that different than when the Jews kind of get all this wealth before they leave Egypt on their way out? But that'll be a teaser for when you for if you see the Haggadah itself, and if you see in the commentary. So I shifted the commentary a bunch when I talk about the pact. When there's one episode where Jerry and Elaine are trying to get their car reservation, and they're told, we don't have that car, and he's like, how is that possible? I reserved it. Like, the important part is holding the reservation, not taking the reservation. But God says that he would both take the reservation and hold the reservation by making a pact with us. And I imagined all the bad people throughout Jewish history are Newman. That's kind of like the way, the disdain that Jerry has for Newman throughout the show, we can have towards the ones that have stood against us throughout our generations. And even the pictures are like, I had a great illustrator, Shira Greenspan, who kind of made these like combined Seinfeld and Torah illustrations. So instead of Juji fruits, they're Jewy fruits that aren't actually, I mean, the kidneyot, I guess, but at least are kosher throughout the rest of the year. And then if you can see, it's small. I don't know if you guys can see this, but even the line between usually there's like a separation between the commentary and the text. So you can see that I actually made it so that it's actually the base intro, like the bibaru bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, that thing. So it's transliterated into English on the English side and Hebrew on the Hebrew side. So this is just an example of what the Haggadah looks like. So it's kind of, it's both fun, but also real, in the sense that it's like a real Haggadah that you can use and have things to say at a Seder, or have thoughts, like deep thoughts to think about while you're going through, at the same time being kind of fun, a little irreverent at times, I guess, and something a little bit different than, I guess, what I would call your average Haggadah. So why did I think to do this? I'll stop sharing right now, but I'll leave it for a minute. But why did I think to do this? That is usually the question that I'm asked. I've loved Seinfeld for a really, really long time. I actually saw it in college, so it was after the show had ended already. But it's been on reruns forever. It's like a cultural cornerstone in a way that very few things are, and I think it's just it's really, honestly, the best comedy I've seen. I've watched a bunch of TV, and it really still holds up in today's age. I mean, obviously, it would have been different with cell phones and things like that, but the situations that they're in, the feelings that they're having, the things that they're saying, really hold up in a way that I think a lot of shows don't. Especially from, like, let's say the 90s or even earlier. And I think there's just so much in that show to say about what people are like, and like what people actually would want to be if they didn't care about society's conventions. Like, the characters in the show are so bad. Like, they're not exactly people I would necessarily want to be friends with, or maybe I would only want to interact with them if I was their friends. But they're kind of like bad people. But I think largely what they are people that we kind of wish we were, or wish we could be, if we didn't care about other people's feelings, if we didn't care about the other things. So this is a question that was just asked, is like, could The Office or The Big Bang Theory Haggadah be in the future? Like, I definitely think you could do that. I just, there's something iconic about Seinfeld that still is going on that I think isn't true about those shows. Maybe true about The Office. I'm not sure. That over time will remain to be seen. But there's something like about a cultural cornerstone about what we were, about who we are in this day and age, feels so important about it, and similarly true with Pesach. Pesach is a cultural cornerstone throughout generations, and kind of anyone knows about what Passover is, right? I feel like you can go to anyone on the street and ask them, what's Passover about? And they can basically tell you, right? You can't do that about Shavuot or Sukkot or probably even Purim. Like I like maybe in New York you can, but I don't think overall you can do that. But with Passover, it's different. And Seinfeld has that like kind of unique quality where I feel like you just ask who's the main character in Seinfeld, and everyone knows who Jerry Seinfeld is. Like this isn't some like one-off, like only if you've seen the show thing. And the real reason I thought to do this is because I think the themes actually fit very well. It's going to be the first thing I teach, so I don't want to give that away too quick. But I actually think the themes work fairly well. In terms of has Seinfeld been involved, I don't think people realize how famous Jerry Seinfeld is. And just to get on his, if I get on his radar, that means this did way better than I even thought it possibly could. So I would be thrilled if such a thing happened. My wife's last name is Dreyfus, and Elaine's last name is Dreyfus, not in the show, but in real life. So it's possible we're related even. So that would be really fun. That would be kind of a dream, that type of thing to happen. So we'll see. Those are kind of the things that I wanted to talk about initially. But essentially, it's kind of like a two-sided coin. On the one hand, I think taking a modern TV show and relating it to Seinfeld makes the Passover story, the Pesach story, be more relevant because we're supposed to make it relevant, and it's hard sometimes, right? This is a story that happened thousands of years ago, and to make us feel like we understand what's going on is hard. But at the same time, I think it does the opposite thing, where I hope it makes people think about the entertainment they look at. That when they watch a show or a movie or a Broadway play, that they consider like, what are the better themes? What are the what can I learn from this, and how does it relate to my Judaism? Is something that I try and do when I watch TV, not always, but when I watch shows or movies. And I think this is a great display of that. I didn't talk about that in the Haggadah itself because I wanted it to be somewhat self-evident. I think if you go through it, you'll be like, wow, there really is a lot to learn from Seinfeld. And I'm sure there's tons more that I didn't touch. I had a lot more ideas, but I needed something to be both good from a Pesach standpoint and from a Passover standpoint, and good from a Seinfeld standpoint at the same time, which wasn't always so easy. Any other questions that you think I should answer off the bat? I know we'll have time for questions at the end.
And if folks have questions, you always use the virtual raise hand function. And if you don't know where that is, you can send me a chat that you'd like to ask a question, and we'll get you unmuted.
Okay, great. So I thought I would teach one or two of them, or a couple. We'll see how much time we have. Some of them are longer than others. I see a hand up. Can you do that or
Iris?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'll unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Are you going to do some? I'd like to hear it with your voice. Are you going to do some reading of the Haggadah?
I absolutely can. Should we do that? Yeah,
that would be fun.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So you know what? I'll make sure to do that as part of the as what I'm doing now.
Okay.
Maybe not for this first one.
Should I put the hand down now?
Yeah.
We got you.
So what I wanted to show is I think generally, if you think about Seinfeld, it's usually called the show about nothing, which is why the Haggadah is called the Haggadah about nothing. I guess that's another question, I guess. The Haggadah isn't about nothing. But I also think Seinfeld isn't actually about nothing. There's a very clear question that like what's the connection between these two things? What's the actual connection? Because somebody asked, is the Chinese restaurant? This is one place where it is mentioned, right? Like people waiting for a Chinese restaurant, which is probably the most famous episode, maybe, because it's like where Seinfeld really got it. Like the show really hit its stride at that episode, season 2, episode 11, if you aren't following. But it's really one of the most iconic ones because literally nothing happens. They're just waiting, and waiting for a table, and they eventually leave, and they don't even get their get their table at the Chinese restaurant. So it feels like nothing happens. But I actually think largely that's not actually true. It's not actually about nothing. And I'll explain what I mean by that. This is something that I don't think people understood at the beginning. This is something that I think only people understood as they started watching it again. I'm going to show the very last scene of the show. It's the last, let's say 20 seconds of the show. Oh wait, when I share it, 1 second. I just need to make sure I share the sounds and optimize for video clip. Okay. 1 second. I'm going to show the last bit of the show. This is the final ending of Seinfeld. This is literally, it ends on what I'm about to show. Oh, it was supposed to. I don't want to show the whole clip. I don't need to show the whole clip. 1 second. 1 second. Here, we'll start from here. This is the ending. Like there's one after credit scene, but this is the ending of the show. So I'll show about a minute.
Uh-oh. I got it. It's out. About that, huh? Oh, boy, what a relief.
See, now, to me, that button is in the worst possible spot.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The second button is the key button. It literally makes or breaks the shirt. Look at it. It's too high. It's in no man's land.
Haven't we had this conversation before?
You think?
I think we have.
Yeah, maybe we have.
Okay, so that's how Seinfeld ends. Seinfeld ends on them just talking about his buttons on his shirt, that the second button makes or break the shirt, and them talking about, haven't we had this conversation before? It seems like the most random thing you could possibly imagine. So it is, unless you realize that it's the exact same conversation they had at the very beginning of the first episode. So now I'm going to play the very beginning of the first episode. And when I mean the very beginning, this is like the beginning of the very beginning of the show. So this is like the first seconds, the first 25 seconds of the entire series. Oh wait, 1 second. I just want to make sure. Just want to make sure I'm sharing with the audio. Yes, I am. Okay.
See, now, to me, that button's in the worst possible spot. The second button literally makes or breaks the shirt. Look at it. It's too high. It's in no man's land. You look like you live with your mother.
Are you through?
You do, of course, try on when you buy.
Yes, it was purple. I liked it. I don't actually recall considering the button.
Oh, you don't recall.
How come you're not doing the second show tomorrow?
Okay. So it's literally the exact same conversation that they have 9 years earlier. I imagine if like in a world where you're not watching the whole thing straight through. A lot of people didn't realize that. They're having the exact same conversation 9 years earlier, 9 years later, and they think they've had the conversation, but it doesn't really matter. Except the difference is, instead of sitting in a coffee shop, they're sitting in a jail cell, because largely for being bad people, right? That's what the finale is. Them, every single person that they've interacted with over 9 years coming in and saying like how bad they are. Seinfeld is a show where these 4 people literally don't change. They don't change over 9 years. They don't change at all. And the show is very clearly showing us what that looks like. What does it look like when people don't change? They have the same conversations they had in 1989 that they have in 1997. They haven't changed at all. And this is so much so that, like Larry David, who's the other co-writer, fully talked about how the whole theory on every episode is that no change, no hugging, no learning. They're not supposed to learn. They're not supposed to become better people. They're not supposed to become better people at all. The Haggadah is teaching us something very different. In fact, the Haggadah is teaching us, I think, the opposite of that. So I'll have a couple sources that I talk about in terms of in the introduction. But wait, don't show that. Okay. So just very quickly, in Halach Ma'anya, I'll make it a little bigger. In Halach Ma'anya, this is the very beginning of Magid. This year we are slaves. Next year we will be free people. Right. The last sentence of this, Hashta Avdei Lashana Haba B'nei Chorin. This year we are slaves. Next year we will be free people. Like, there's supposed to be a transformation. We're supposed to feel like we're slaves, and we're supposed to feel like we're being freed. There's supposed to be a change in us on Passover night, and we're not supposed to stay stagnant. We're supposed to imagine that next year we're going to be better. We're going to be freer. We're going to be different. Similarly, in the Talmud in 116, it asks, how do you do Magid? How do you do the Seder? So it was taught in the Mishnah that the Seder begins with disgrace and it concludes with glory, right? We start with that we were in a bad place and we go to a good place, right? There's a movement. And there's an argument between Rav and Shmuel over what is the disgrace. Is it that we were idol worshippers or that we were slaves? But that's almost moot, right? The point is that the whole idea is that we're supposed to kind of be changed. We're supposed to be different. We're supposed to be better. We're supposed to change for the better, and we're not supposed to stay stagnant where we are. So Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik says this explicitly. The purpose of the Exodus, and thereby its remembrance, is that it's supposed to teach ethical sensitivity, what it truly means to be a Jew. It sought to transform the Jew into a Rachaman, one possessing a heightened form of ethical sensitivity and responsiveness. Right? The point of the Seder, whether or not you agree with that, this is specifically the point of the Seder, but the point of the Seder is to transform you. You're supposed to be different at the end of the night than you were at the beginning. It's not just an intellectual exercise. You're supposed to be actively different. And Rav Kook, who was the first chief rabbi of Israel, the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Israel, I should say, argued that Nirtza, that's the whole point of Nirtza. All those songs at the end, you ever wonder, why are all these songs at the end? They seem kind of random. Why are we singing silly songs? He answers that the reason we sing all those silly songs is because by the end of the night, it's no longer an intellectual exercise. We've already changed. We don't need to talk about the Exodus. We can just sing about it. We don't need to really think about it anymore. We can sing silly kid songs because we've gotten to the place of acceptance the way a kid has accepted. That we've already transformed. We've already become different people. And so the Haggadah and Seinfeld really are showing very opposite things. The Haggadah is showing we need to transform. We need to be different people. We need to change. We need to be better. We need to be different. Seinfeld is showing us what happens if you don't do that. What happens if you don't try and change? What happens if you don't try and be different people? What if you try and stay the same and just talk in meaningless conversations for years on ends, it ends up being the same thing. It's kind of showing us what would happen. So my personal opinion is that Seinfeld isn't about nothing, because it's about what happens if you act like that. If you act like that for your life, you end up in jail, you end up embarrassed in front of everyone, you end up having everyone in your life come through and tell you how bad of a person you are. That's the type of reaction you get when you act like the Seinfeld characters. And not acting like the Seinfeld characters is doing what we learn on Pesach, is to try and be better people and try and act better. It's that we don't have the same conversations 9 years later, that our Haggadah, our Seder changes, right? I hope over time that, you kind of, not just at the Seder, but in life, you deepen, you become a better person, you become a more thoughtful person, you become a more sensitive person. And it's not just a life that you're just living through, but it's something you're questioning and something you're becoming better. So in that way, I really think it's the same, the same kind of theory. It's one of the reasons I think Seinfeld fits for this, because I think the philosophy of Seinfeld really fits well with the philosophy of the Haggadah and the Seder in general. And I hope that we're able to do that, that we're able to use the Seder to, to be slightly better people, and to be more thoughtful people, in the same way that they should have in the show. Otherwise, maybe they wouldn't have ended up in jail. I'll answer some of these questions at the end because they're good questions in the chat. Should I answer some questions, or should I go to another Dvar Torah piece? What do you think? It doesn't matter.
Up to you.
Okay, so I'll do one more Dvar Torah piece before I kind of go through this. I want to find one that I think is fairly funny. So there were some interactions that I think you had to know were going to happen. I'm not going to go through it now, but very obviously the four sons are the four characters in Seinfeld. It had to be that way. I actually think it fits really well. It's my longest Dvar Torah, so I'm not going to go through. It's my longest bit of commentary, so I'm not going to do that right now. But the one of the ones that were obvious is that we dip twice at the Seder, and there's a very famous scene where George double dips. So I'd like to show that. So I'd first like to ask the question: why do we dip at the Seder? And the question isn't so obvious, even to a lot of really big commentaries. Maimonides, the Tour, a whole bunch of commentaries say it's literally so we ask questions. There's no real reason to dip. It's just funny. It's just something weird that we don't normally dip so much, and we're just dipping at the Seder because it's not obvious, and it's not obvious on purpose. And so granted, a lot of others have a different answers to this, that dipping is a specific way you can establish freedom, that it's the way rich people ate back then, and so that's why we do it. But still, why do we dip at the Seder? Why do we do it twice? We never really, I've never really seen so many good answers to that question, other than it's just weird to do it a lot. This is one of those times where a Seinfeld clip actually gave me an answer to this question. So I do this a bunch of times in the Haggadah, where a clip from Seinfeld is somewhat like an answer, of a source. So this is one example of that. So I'd like to share a clip, and while you're watching it, I just think about what kind of how this can answer this question. So I'll share my screen again. I'm sorry for all the sharing, back and forth. Okay, so now we'll go to this clip. 1 second, the chip dip. 1 second, it's 1 minute, so it's not very long.
What are you doing? What? Did you just double dip that chip?
Excuse me?
You double dipped the chip.
Double dipped? What are you talking about?
You dipped the chip, you took a bite, and you dipped again.
So?
That's like putting your whole mouth right in the dip. Look, from now on, when you take a chip, just take one dip and end it.
Well, I'm sorry, Timmy, but I don't dip that way.
Oh, you don't, huh?
No. You dip the way you want to dip. I'll dip the way I want to dip.
Give me the chip!
Hey!
Give me the chip!
So in that clip, George is at a funeral. I should have given some context. George is at a funeral. Timmy's mourning in that scenario, and he dips the chip. He dips it again. He clearly knows it's wrong because he looks around before he does it again, and that is considered offensive. And I think we can imagine. I think we've probably all seen somebody do something like this, whether or not it's like dipping a chip twice or it's drinking straight from the bottle. Like these types of things are fairly common. The kind of the thought that I had though is, what's so wrong about it? Like, why is that different? Like, we're dipping twice on the Seder, but we're dipping twice. Obviously you're not dipping again into the same thing, right? You're dipping in salt water and then the charoset, or the maror into the charoset. But what's so wrong? So it seems very clear that what's so wrong is that it's freeing to just be able to dip. You don't need to take it onto your plate. You dip straight into the thing. You kind of like own the dip when you do that. What George does is he kind of takes that idea, but takes it too far, right? Like he dips once, and then when he dips again, he like stops other people from being able to act that way, right? Like there's something freeing about being able to just dip into it. But when you dip into it twice, it's very freeing. But it's not freeing for Timmy, right? He takes it away. He takes away Timmy's agency to feel free to dip in that, because he feels like he put his whole face right into it, right? Like George kind of took the whole thing. So I think what we're doing at the Seder is we're getting a bit of what George is doing. We're feeling free to just dip our foods. That's freeing. But we also need to be sensitive that, and we're doing that a lot because we want to feel free. But don't double dip, because double dipping is, we don't allow the other people at the Seder to do it, right? If you dip your parsley in salt water, take a bite and dip it again, right? Somebody else that wants to dip their parsley can't do that. And so we should be sensitive for that. But I think this shows at least the idea of what's going on, of kind of what's going on there. Yes, that's also true. In times of COVID, we shouldn't be sharing food at all. But there's a whole bunch of other things to deal with that, and I guess don't put any other chemicals into your salt water. I was thinking possibly of doing one more. Does that? I don't know if I have time to do the one I wanted to do.
Sure.
Yeah. Is it a hard stop at 1:30?
1:30-ish.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to do this one quickly. This is one of my favorite Divrei Torah. If you've seen V'hi Shamda, I showed that page. So V'hi Shamda is this really dramatic part of the Seder, where we describe like all these people that have hurt us throughout the years, that have like done bad to us, and usually I think at any Seder I've been to, it's been sung. It's been sung in one of two ways. There's the old-timey tune. I'm going to play both of them. There's the old-timey tune of V'hi Shamda, and then there's like this new tune of Yaakov Shweki that I'm not going to try and sing right now. I'm going to leave it to a real vocalist to do. But they're very different songs. And something that my brother-in-law noticed at a Seder a bunch of years ago is that the tone is different. The tone is completely different in the songs, and I think that matters, and we think that matters a lot. So I wanted to show two quick clips of Seinfeld that you can clearly see how people say things matters a lot. So I'll share my screen again. I'll show one then the other. I'll probably talk in between them for a minute. But the principle is going to go very, very clearly. So the first one's a very famous one. If you know your Seinfeld, you've probably seen this.
Okay, I'm there with.
But basically, Kramer gets a line in a Woody Allen movie. The line is, "These pretzels are making me thirsty." Everyone kind of takes a shot at trying to say it.
Woody, you know, I'm at this
that's
bar
all the context.
It's Woody Allen. Did I mention that?
Yeah, we got it.
And I'm sitting there with Woody, and I turn to him and I go, "Boy, these pretzels are making me thirsty."
Is that how you're going to say it?
No, I'm working on it.
Do it like this. These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Oh, these pretzels are making me thirsty. No, see, that's no good. See, you don't know how to act.
These pretzels are making me thirsty. Oh, that was no good?
I didn't say anything.
All right, I'm gonna go break up with Owen.
What was wrong with that? I had a different interpretation. Do you know anything about this pretzel guy? Maybe he's been in the bar a really long time and he's really depressed because he has no job and no woman and he's parking cars for a living. All right, shut up! Shut up! I hear you! I'm coming down! These pretzels are making me thirsty! Yeah!
So in that clip, very clearly, how people say that line shows a lot about what's going on in them. George is very upset, so he's acting in a very upset way. Jerry's feeling calm and everything's fine, and he's always jovial in the show, so he says it in a jovial way. Elaine is about to break up with somebody, so she's keeping it very even keel. She says it very even keely. Like how you say things really conveys what's going on, and it doesn't just matter what the words you're saying. So there were a lot of options for this. So this is just another one. It's a short clip that very clearly shows this idea as well.
So, Jerome, I did a little snooping around for you.
Oh, what'd you find out, Lois?
Well, I talked to Tim Watley.
Yeah?
And I asked him, should Jerry bring anything?
Subtle.
And he said, why would Jerry bring anything?
All right, but let me ask you this question.
What?
Which word did he emphasize? Did he say, why would Jerry bring anything? Or, why would Jerry bring anything? Did he emphasize Jerry or bring?
I think he emphasized would.
So in that clip, Jerry's not sure if he's invited to a party, and it clearly is dependent on how it was said, right? Like how the how the words were said literally changes what it means. So the analog here. So is it? I realize, is it possible for me to share my audio, or do I need to share my screen as well? I'll share my screen. You know what? I'll share my Vihishamda screen, and then I'll share my audio as well. So you can see the words here. Obviously I switched. Not only one person has stood up, but I switched it for Newman. But regardless, I want you to listen to two different songs. This is by Micha Gamerman. It's a Pesach medley. If you YouTube Pesach medley, you'll see this. But he's gonna do two different tunes for Vihishamda. And I want you to notice, where's the high point of the song?
Vihishamda, Vihishamda, lavotenu velanu. Vihishamda, Vihishamda, lavotenu velanu. שלא אחד בלבד
עמד עלינו לכלותנו
שלא אחד בלבד
עמד עלינו לכלותנו
אלא שבכל דור ודור עומדים עלינו לכלותנו אלא שבכל דור ודור עומדים עלינו לכלותנו
והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו בידיו והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו בידיו.
Okay, so that's the first song. The first song is very clearly Ella Shebechol Dor Vador, apologize for the Hebrew, Omdim Aleinu Lechalotenu is the high point, right? In every generation, people have stood up, or Newmans stand up against us to destroy us, right? That's the high point of that song. Now, the Shweki song, which came out in 2008, much more recently, right, is very different. And it's going to go...
והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מצילנו בידיו והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מצילנו בידיו.
So that's the high point of the Yaakov Shweki song in recent times. And the high point is not that everyone stands up against us to destroy us. The high point very clearly is, and God saves us from their hands. I think that's significant, or he thought that was significant, was that in our history, we've been downtrodden for so long. It's hard times. So we tend to focus on the fact that, people stand up against us to destroy us. But in modern times, we feel very comfortable. We feel very confident, not just in America, but with the state of Israel and like Jews standing in the world. And even though there's anti-Semitism still exists, and there are still people against us to destroy us in every generation, at the same time, we can feel confident that God saves us from their hands, is something we can feel confident in. And so I think it's a good parallel, right? Like just like how you say these pretzels are making me thirsty changes its meaning, how you sing the song changes its meaning a lot. And I think that's something we should think about. It's why we sing both of those songs at our Seder. But it's something we should think about throughout our lives also, like how we say things matters. And it isn't just what we say. So I think now we have like 15 minutes for questions. Should I go through the ones that I saw here? Or?
There were some good questions earlier.
Yeah.
Do you remember what they were?
Yeah, so I think I saw some of them. So in terms of the cameo, so I know cameo, Larry Thomas, he's the soup Nazi. I thought about, there's a whole Dvar Torah about the soup Nazi. It had to be in there. But I thought about doing cameo. It's more complicated when you're trying to use it for marketing, so I decided not to do that. But is there Eliyahu in Seinfeld? This is going to be for people that know what they're talking about. But I specifically talk about him as like the ultimate pop-in guy, and Jerry probably would have hated Eliyahu because he just always pops in all the time. In terms of, okay, so when did I think about making a book with a Seinfeld theme? So I've wanted to do this for a really long time. For at least 10 years. I've had this on my, hey, somebody has it. I've had it, oh, hi, Shira. Thank you, Shira, for Shira's on this call, and she did all the illustrations. She did a great job. So I've had this idea for a long time. Even as a Haggadah, I've thought this through for a while. I just haven't had the time to be able to do this. It took about a year to write. It's actually funny. I actually had twins in April last year, April 17th, the day after Pesach last year. Ironically, that gave me the time to do this. I know that sounds absurd, but it did. They were really preemie, so they couldn't really sleep at night. And the only way they would really sleep is being held. And there were two of them, and they need to be fed every 2 hours. So basically one of us needed to be up all night. So I had the like 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift. And so while I was feeding them, I was watching episodes. What do you do? You're not even supposed to make eye contact because you're supposed to try to get them to sleep when you have preemies like that. And what do I do when I'm just holding a baby in a carrier and just standing for hours on end? So this is what I did. So largely this Haggadah was written in, March, in May, June, July, August of last year, between like 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning. And then I would go to sleep. Like then I would sleep and my wife would take over. So it took a long time. It probably would have taken longer if I was trying to fit it around other stuff. But because I had like a good 4 hours every night to focus on this, it actually made it somewhat more doable. I know that sounds absurd, but it made sense in the moment. And frankly, I feel like everyone needed this year to have something good to hold on to. So that, like the babies have been a complete blessing, but they've also been very hard. So it's good I had something else to like kind of focus my, have fun with something else. I saw some other questions. Do the clips come with the Haggadah? So they don't, but there are notes in the back that actually tell you where. I don't know if you saw, but there were numbers next to every bit of the translation and next to every bit of the commentary to tell you which episode is everything's in. So you can go and check. You can go and see, go watch an episode if you thought like a Dvar Torah was particularly interesting, a piece of commentary was interesting. You can just go and watch the episode and kind of find it and see if you saw the episode the same way I did. I'm trying to go through. I'm sure there's more at the end. Anyone have any other questions? Oh, what about the role of women in Seinfeld and the Haggadah? So I didn't talk about that explicitly. I thought about it. I thought about it because I actually read an article about how is Elaine a feminist character. I couldn't find like a real like interaction because Seinfeld isn't really great with women characters. They actually joke about it in the episode called The Pilot. There's a meta episode where they're writing the show in the show. And they joke about how they don't know how to write for women. And it largely is that joke lands because it's kind of true. Like Elaine is clearly a woman in the show, obviously, but she's not really written so much as like your classic female. And it's largely because Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, like admittedly didn't know how to write for women so well. So it made that a little more complicated. So that's why I didn't focus on that too much because I didn't want to, it kind of was fairly negative. Two people asked about feats of strength or airing of grievances. So it comes up Festivus comes up a lot because it obviously has to, not as much as there's a different Haggadah called the Festivus Haggadah, which is a complete hoot. Totally, if you're really into Seinfeld, it's also definitely worth your time to get. It's like he like rewrote the Haggadah for Festivus. So it's not a Haggadah to use at the Seder, it's a Haggadah to use at Festivus. But I specifically use this with I call the airing of, one second, I just want to find it, so I say it right. But my acknowledgements, it's the airing of acknowledgements. And the tradition of published books begins with the airing of acknowledgements. I got a lot of blessings from you people. Now you're going to hear about it. And I noted that my wife did the real feats of strength during this Haggadah because she heard me talk about Seinfeld for like a year straight. And if you're not a Seinfeld fan, that's a lot. So, it's definitely possible to do a virtual Seder. That's a really good idea to do kind of a virtual Seinfeld Magid. That would take a lot longer than this, but that's a fun idea. I should definitely look into doing that and finding a platform to do that. I'm trying to think. Okay, that's all I see unless anyone has any other questions. That's all I saw in the chat, at least.
I'm going to repost that link to the Haggadah so that folks have it. If everyone could just pause on the chats for a second so that everyone can see that link. If you wanted to buy the Haggadah.
Right, but also if you go on Amazon and you search the Haggadah about nothing, or Seinfeld Haggadah, or Rabbi Sam Reinstein, or anything resembling this, you're going to find it. They do a good job with their algorithm.
Great.
As we all know.
Any other questions? Oh, which character of Seinfeld do you identify with the most?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I vacillate between Jerry and George, I think, because the way I describe Jerry is a very like cares about the rules, and when you're a rabbi, that's kind of like the type of thing. But George just kind of gets in his own head a lot. So that's definitely going to be is something that I think about too. And then somebody asked me in direct, what Haggadah will you use at your own Seder this year? That's a good question. I don't know if I can use this one just because my wife's heard enough about this, and I don't know if I can do it more because she's heard virtually everything. And if we had a big Seder, I almost definitely would use this. But I imagine due to unless the vaccine rollout goes even crazier faster than it already is, that's likely not going to happen. They did do, in terms of a reunion, they did do a reunion kind of. They did it in Curb Your Enthusiasm in season 9, I think. It's definitely worthwhile. It's definitely worthwhile something to check in about. Those episodes are funny. I actually referenced them twice in the Haggadah itself. Somebody asked in direct message. Okay, so the reason they end up in jail is because of this idea of a Good Samaritan law. This idea that if you can save somebody and you don't, you're actually liable. On some level, this does have, and he asked if there's a Jewish analog. This is very similar to the biblical principle of Lo Tamod al Dam Re'echa, that if somebody's getting hurt, you need to stop and save them. It's actually a fairly religious principle that is very founded in Jewish tradition. That doesn't mean we should make it like American law, but that American law, I think the basis of that idea is founded in Judaic principles, and definitely reasonable. And I think that's what this is Pesach's about. It's about us knowing that we have to be there for each other and be better people, and doing things together. Somebody asked if Newman is mentioned. He's mentioned all over the place. Not only is he mentioned in the translation twice, as you saw once, but I talk about why they hate each other so much, and I talk about how Jerry hates Newman in a different way than Newman hates Jerry, in the reference of Shvocha Matcha, where we say to pour out your wrath against the nations. So I imagine Newman is the nation that we want to pour out our wrath on. So that's how Newman's mentioned. Booing Newman. That would be for the Haggadah. Does Kramer provide bagels for everyone when the Pesach ends? He gets fired right then, right at the end of that episode. But that's okay. Any other questions? So I referenced that whether or not he's aware of the Haggadah. So he's not yet, I don't think. Is Seinfeld aware of this Haggadah? He's not yet. It would need to get really famous. He's he's the most famous comedian in the world. So if he did, it would mean it did really, really well. But he's not particularly known to love fan art, like fan makings of Seinfeld, not from a copyright perspective, but just from he likes it to stand on its own and kind of disdains people for doing things like this. So I don't know how much he would love it, but that's just based on his own personal character and nothing to do with me.